Rolling camera.
You want to tell that story about Roger at the
Take 4.
Unadilla? And you want me to start into it and then kind of back up into it just to get in the mood, or what?
Just say that Unadilla and then say the date first and then talk about it.
Or as one time we had a race? Well, one time I can remember racing Roger that the exact words are in my brain. And that's about 1978, Unadilla, New York. Kind of a typical New York day, rainy, track's beautiful, grass this high, start out the race. And first moto, Roger didn't get a very good start. I got a little bit worse start. We come up through the pack. At about this point, we're 30 minutes into the race. He's 3rd place, I'm 4th place approximately. I remember a Graham Noyes, Brad Lackey was ahead of us. I catch him, and I go by him expecting a confrontation. And I pass him, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm getting ready in the next corner. I'm thinking, man, he's going to blast by me, and I come out of the corner, kind of look back, and no fight at all. And I'm thinking, boy, the old boy is about dead. I'm thinking the old man is about had it. He's just not going to do it anymore. He just doesn't have it anymore. I go, this is Unadilla, and he's going to let, and he's the king, and he's the king of Unadilla, and he's going to let me beat him. I go, amazing. And I go on up, and I pass into the lead, and Roger stays in 2nd, and he comes up, and he lets me have the win. And I'm thinking, that's strange. Well, first of all, I wasn't smart enough to remember that if I win the first moto, and he wins the second moto, that first moto means nothing. He'll win. So I never thought that thought, you know. Well, Roger is. He's thinking that I'm not going to fight this kid twice. I'm going to fight him once. You hear that frog? So anyway, second moto comes around. And you want that frog? Actually, get that frog.
Keep going.
So second moto comes around, and basically same thing happens. Neither one riding with you guys just to whip those.
Roll camera.
Mark it.
Marker. 1A. So Bob, tell us what you were doing when you got out of high school.
Well, right after I got out of high school, I was working at a bicycle shop, and I didn't really have much going on. A buddy of mine asked me if I'd like to race his bike, just kind of a gag, just to see if I really could go fast on. I'd been riding for 10 years, and I could ride pretty good, but never got the opportunity to race. And I went and did a local race, and I won that, and then decided to race a little longer, and moved to LA from Lancaster. And I raced local for about a year, and then got on with DG for a while, then rode for Suzuki for a while, local races, and then in 76, or actually November of 75, signed with Yamaha and started riding the Nationals.
So that was your first professional contract?
Basically, I was a welder while I was riding until end of 75, and I couldn't really make enough money just riding. You know, some weeks I'd have a couple $100 in my pocket, and some weekends I'd be borrowing money to eat the next week. So 76 is the first time I got a salary.
Could I start you again on that and just say, like when you first got out of high school and you were riding, just sort of sum up the whole story for us. You couldn't make enough dough riding alone, or riding alone, so you were working at the same time, and tell us what you were doing.
Okay.
One more time, if you could.
When I first got out of high school, I was working as a welder, and I was riding on the weekends, and there was no way I could make enough money racing motorcycles to eat. So you'd work 5 days a week and work at night on the bikes and ride Saturday and Sunday, and sometimes you made a lot of money on the weekends, sometimes you spent a lot of money. So about 1976 is the first time I got a factory ride.
How much were you getting paid back then? Was it big? Was it good money?
The money back in 76 wasn't quite like it is in 95. I think some of the riders now sign their first contract for well over 100,000. In those days, $1,000 a month and you were quite happy.
What about when you were coming up through the ranks and doing all this? Did you look to Roger as like was he like, I wouldn't know if it would be a hero or your mentor or somebody that you looked up to and tried to pattern after? Or?
Well, when I first started racing motorcycles, you have to understand that I had never read any magazines. I had no heroes at that time, But as soon as I signed with Yamaha, you know, I started seeing all these Europeans, Roger and Heike and all these guys. And obviously, as I've told everybody, Roger was God to me. I mean, if he said it was red, it was red. And he said if it stood this high, it was that high. I mean, it was. I remember seeing the first cardboard cutout of him, and I was so jealous that guy has his own cardboard cutout. I thought he had made it then.
So when did you like position yourself so that one day you could?
Oh well, I stole many ideas from Roger on his riding style, and basically I patterned myself after him. I mean, what gave me a lot of drive in those days is looking at those guys, and I was actually jealous of them. And they were my hero, but I was jealous. I wanted to be them, and so I worked full time at being him. You know.
Anything he did, you could do.
I didn't like him getting all that publicity and all that money, and me not getting it.
Well, there was a time in and you're gonna have to rephrase this too. There was a time in America's history when America wasn't dominant. I mean, did you position yourself that one day, or did you just work and it just happened? Like, I'm gonna kick their ass type of thing, and you know, everybody said, nobody's gonna beat the Europeans, and
well, in '75 or in the early '70s, even into '76 or '7, nobody even thought about being the Europeans. You basically thought about being first American. You said, well, a big saying each weekend, well, Hannah was first American or Lackey was first American. I mean, to be first American could have been 10th or could have been 4th. And I don't know if we really thought about beating them. You thought about in those days being first American, and then later, I mean, by '77 we were thinking about beating them, or I certainly was. And first time we ever beat the Europeans in a series was '78, is when I beat Roger in the Trans Am.
He was already a 5-time world champion.
He was 5-time world champion. He was old, and I was young and cocky, and he was actually going downhill. You know, that was the only reason I beat him.
Okay, do that one over here, please.
There's the frogs.
Okay, so you were competing against Roger when he was on the way out, and you were on the way up. One more time.
Well, like I was saying, the Europeans until the early '70s, well, even in the early '70s, were dominant. And '75, '76, '77, it was our greatest feat to say we were first American, or I was first American, or Brad Lackey was first American for that weekend, last weekend. And about '77, I think a few of us had an idea that, well, we're going to win one of these, and we're not going to be first American, but we're going to win the race first overall. But it really never happened for a series until '78, and I beat Roger in the Trans Am series. But basically, if we told the truth, Roger was getting old, I was young, I was cocky, and if we'd have backed up 4 years and Roger would have been in his prime and I would have been in my prime, I don't know that I would have beat him.
Okay, good. Let's go for a close-up. Okay, I got a question for you, which is
No, just keep going.
I got a question for you, which is like right around that time, okay, you're an American competing against the Europeans and they're the hot dogs. Why don't you tell us what it takes in terms of a training regimen, discipline, and focus to beat those guys? What did it take you at that stage to like get up to those guys' levels and finally like beat them? What did it take?
Well, in '76, I was telling the story about when I first started riding for Yamaha and went over to Belgium to ride Trophy of the Nations. I got the opportunity to ride with Roger on his test track in the sand, and I thought, I'd say 20 years old at the time, I thought I was riding